This is section 11 of the Odyssey. Nausicaa. In the land of the Phaeacians, while Odysseus slept, the goddess Athena was at work planning his rescue. She knew exactly the right person to help him. Beautiful Nausicaa, the daughter of the Phaeacian king. Athena made her way to King Alcinous's palace and found Nausicaa sleeping in her room. Two maids were asleep by the door to guard against intruders, but Athena wafted past them and through the closed doors like a puff of wind. Disguising herself as one of Nausicaa's friends, she hovered over the princess's bed and whispered into her dreams. Look at your room, Nausicaa. Dirty clothes all over the floor. You'll never find a husband if you're so untidy. Get your father to lend us a wagon in the morning, and we'll go down to the river and do some washing. Then you'll be ready if someone handsome comes courting. Athena knew that would get Nausicaa hurrying down to the river, and the washing pools were right by the place where Odysseus was hiding. Smiling to herself, the goddess flew back to high Olympus. As rosy-fingered dawn lit up the sky, Nausicaa awoke and remembered her dream. Quickly she dressed and went to find her father. Please lend me a wagon, she said to King Alcinous, to go down to the washing pools. I want to wash all my fine clothes, and yours too, just in case someone important comes calling. She was too shy to mention what kind of someone she meant, but her father understood. Without asking questions, he told his men to prepare a mule cart. Nausicaa went all around the palace, collecting armfuls of beautiful, brightly colored clothes. She packed them into the cart, and her mother filled a box with food and wine. Enjoy yourselves, she said. Chattering and laughing, Nausicaa and her friends went down to the washing pools. They had no idea that Odysseus was sleeping underneath the olive tree there. They expected to spend the whole day on their own. At first they worked hard, treading the washing clean in the clear water. When that was done, they spread the clothes out to dry on the shingle while they bathed and enjoyed their picnic. Then Nausicaa sang to keep time while they played with a ball. The clothes were dry and the girls were about to pack up and go home when Nausicaa threw the ball for the last time. One of her friends reached out to catch it and missed. It slipped into the river and they all shrieked loudly. The noise awoke Odysseus. He opened his eyes and sat up, instantly alert. Who were the people he could hear down by the river? Were they friendly or hostile? Human beings or gods? He was in no state to meet strangers, but he had to find out. He crawled out of his hiding place, breaking off a leafy branch to hide his nakedness, and holding it in front of him, he walked down to the river. He was a terrifying sight. His filthy skin was covered in scratches, his eyes were wild and desperate, and his whole body was crusted with salt. When the girls saw him, they screamed and ran away in all directions. Only Nausicaa stood her ground. While the others hid in the bushes, she faced Odysseus, waiting for him to speak. Princess, he said, I see that you are brave and beautiful. If you are human, too, have pity on me. I have been adrift for 19 days on the dark sea. Yesterday, I struggled ashore, but as you see, I have lost everything. Please give me some rags to cover my body, and tell me how to reach the nearest town. Sir, said Nausicaa, I am the daughter of Alcinous, the king of this country. Since the gods have brought you here, of course we'll help you. My friends and I will give you some clothes, and when you have washed, we'll take you to the town. She called to her maids, and they crept out of their hiding places. They chose a tunic and a cloak for Odysseus, and gave him olive oil for his bath. Then they left him on his own to wash in the river. When he came to find them again, he looked like a different person. He was clean from head to toe, and his newly washed hair hung in a thick, shining mass. Dressed in the bright cloak and tunic, he was the handsomest man Nausicaa had ever seen. That's the kind of husband I'd like, she whispered to her maids. Wisely, she decided not to take him straight back to the palace. People were sure to gossip if she turned up with such a handsome stranger. Instead, she asked him to wait in a little wood just outside the town. Give us time to reach home, she said. Then come after us. The palace is easy to find. Walk straight in and speak to my mother, Ariet. She will be sitting by the fireside, spinning purple yarn. Fling yourself at her feet and ask for help. If you win her over, she'll make sure you get home safely. Leaving Odysseus in the wood, Nausicaa drove the cart back to the palace. As soon as he was alone, Odysseus sent up a prayer to Athena. May the Phaeacians treat me kindly, he said. There was no immediate answer, but as he walked toward the town, Athena herself came to meet him, disguised as a young girl carrying a jar of water. Can you tell me the way to the palace? Odysseus asked. I'll take you, said Athena, but don't say a word to anyone on the way. The people here don't like strangers. She wrapped him in a magic mist that made him invisible to everyone they passed. Then she led him along the quays and past the bustling harbors to the door of King Alcinous's palace. Go straight inside, she said. Don't speak until you reach Queen Arete. She is wise and noble, and if you touch her heart, you will have a good chance of reaching home at last. Athena left him at the entrance to the palace. For a moment, Odysseus stood still, staring up at the massive golden doors on their posts of silver, and then he stepped through into the great hall. The whole palace was bustling with activity, but Odysseus was still invisible. He walked straight past everything until he reached Queen Arete, spinning beside the hearth. As he flung himself down at her feet, the magic mist cleared suddenly, so that he seemed to appear out of nowhere. There was a startled silence in the hall. Everyone stared at him. He looked up at the queen and spoke in a clear voice. Noble Arete, may the gods bless you and your family. I have suffered many hardships and disasters, and I need your help to reach my home again. Bowing politely, he sat down in the ashes by the hearth to wait for the queen's reply. For a moment, no one knew what to say. Then a wise old lord called Aeneas broke the silence. King Alcinous, he said, you don't usually leave your guests sitting in the ashes. Aren't you going to welcome this man? Immediately the king called for water to rinse Odysseus's hands and told the maids to bring him food and wine. Refresh yourself, sir, he said. Sleep in my palace tonight. Tomorrow I will ask you about your adventures, and then we can discuss your journey home. Queen Arete ordered her maids to prepare a bed for Odysseus. That night he lay down under bright rugs and warm purple blankets and slept soundly until morning. The next day, King Alcinous gave orders for a ship to be made ready, with 52 young men to take the oars. This is for you, stranger, he said to Odysseus. But before you leave, let us show you our Phaeacian hospitality. He organized a great feast for Odysseus and invited the whole town. When everyone had eaten, the blind poet Demodocus took up his lyre and began to sing a story of the Trojan War. Odysseus was cut to the heart, remembering his friends who had died in that war. King Alcinous saw his sad face, but he didn't ask any questions. Instead, as soon as the story was finished, he stood up and stepped back from the table. You have shared our feast, he said to Odysseus, and heard our great poet sing. Now come and see how good our sportsmen are. They flocked out of the palace, and all the young men started jumping and running. They set up wrestling matches and competed at throwing the discus. Everyone took part, including Prince Laodamas, Nausicaa's brother. And how about you, sir? He said to Odysseus. Would you like to share our sports? Odysseus shook his head. Not after all I've been through. I need my strength for traveling home. One of the other young men looked him up and down rudely. You don't look like much of an athlete, he said. Odysseus was annoyed. I used to be one of the best, he said sharply. Let me show you what I can do even now. He jumped to his feet and seized the biggest, heaviest discus. Swinging his arm back, he flung it with all his strength, making the Phaeacians duck as it went flying over their heads. It was a huge throw, beating all the other attempts. Odysseus watched it land and then turned to face his hosts. Is that enough? He said. Would you like me to throw again? Or does one of you want to challenge me to a boxing match? I can wrestle and run too, and I am a better archer than anyone else on earth. How else would you like to test me? Noble guest, said King Alcinous. You have proved yourself already. I don't know who you are, but you're just the kind of man I'd like my daughter to marry. Odysseus shook his head, smiling. She is a beautiful, wise girl, but I have a wife already, and a son too. I must go home to them. We'll send you on your way very soon, said King Alcinous. But first, there are gifts we want to give you. He led Odysseus back into the palace and presented him with a bronze and silver sword. The Phaeacian lords added so many other treasures that Alcinous had to provide a great wooden coffer to hold them all. Then they enjoyed a second feast together. Afterward, Demodocus took up his lyre again. This time, he began to sing about the wooden horse that the Greeks had used to capture Troy. Crafty Odysseus devised the plan and built a hollow horse made out of wood. The Greeks embarked, pretending to retreat, and left the horse behind upon the shore. Triumphantly, the Trojans took it in, not guessing how they were deceived, not knowing Odysseus and his men were crouched inside. Listening to the song, Odysseus saw the shadowy faces of his comrades crouching beside him in the horse's belly. He remembered those same faces lit with the fire of battle as they broke out of the horse and rampaged through the sleeping streets of Troy. Quietly, he began to weep. Alcinous signaled to the poet to stop singing. "Sir," he said to Odysseus, "we can see that you are noble, but you have not told us anything about yourself. Who are you, and why does this song cause you such grief?" Odysseus drew a long breath. "I am Odysseus, Laertes' son," he said. "I was one of the men who crouched inside that wooden horse. I saw Troy fall and the whole city burn, and ever since then, I have been trying to get home to Ithaca." Alcinous stared at him. "But it's almost 10 years since the end of the Trojan War. Why has the journey taken you so long?" Odysseus drew another breath, and then he began to tell the whole story of his travels, right from the beginning.